Welcome to the PranaTech Podcast. I got two special folks with me today, Dan Durning and Rustin Cavill. And these guys are in an interesting space that I don't know much about. And that's the purpose of this today's episode. They have a lot of experience in finance and legal aspects as well. And they bring a combination of different products and experiences. And that's what the podcast is about, right? In general, we're trying to mix uh, three things together: it's technology, entrepreneurship, and I would say growth, right? So you guys bring all of that to one. So I'll let you guys intro yourselves.
Thanks, Amit. Yeah, great to be on the show. Honored to get to participate. Yeah, my name is Dan Durning, co-founder of Coast. My background is I started my career in law, working in risk management. Quickly found out I didn't like that and moved to getting a master's degree in public policy. I thought, I'll just go work on the other side of the world and help solve problems and improve society. In grad school, realized, maybe that's not the path towards solving problems. At the same time, got super interested in technology and blockchain in startups and looking at how they're changing society and impacting our lives every day. And when I finished grad school, I quit law and went into startups and was a product manager, worked in a variety of capacities at various different types of startups, but super passionate about that intersection of technology and solving real world problems. And that's a lot of the inspiration we take into Coast. And I'll kick it over to Rustin for an intro.
Sure. Amit, thanks for having us here. My name is Rustin Cavill. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Coast. My degree's in finance. After college, I wanted to be a financial advisor. I've always been passionate about helping people with personal finance since I was 15 or 16. I watched my family get out of debt and purchase a business, and it made a huge impact on me, and I wanted to be able to spread that to other people as well. Ended up in corporate environments for about a decade. Dan turned me on to blockchain in 2018, and it kind of felt like a culmination of years worth of interest and passion brought with new technology. And I knew at some point that I needed to be involved in it, and that was kind of what led us to launching Coast.
Got it. That's awesome. So here's a trend that I'm seeing, right? Two corporate guys that didn't like corporate culture, and they were trying to, go into a different environment. What didn't you like about corporate culture? And you don't have to go into all the details, but I would say what were some things you liked but didn't like, and why did you transition?
It's a really good question. I think as I've worked in startups, I've met more and more folks who come from corporate backgrounds and eventually, see the light or evolve to seeing startups as the way to go. For me personally, I think, just this classic American concept of if you really work hard, you go to good schools, you get good grades, you get a good job at a nice corporate environment or company. That's something I really bought into, I think, for a large part of my life. And, the prestige of it, the success of it, and looking at, how this looks versus how it makes me feel internally. And I think that's really where the disconnect started for me as to why I wanted to move away from it, is that I personally didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't feel like I was actually making a difference in the world. I felt like it was a very grind heavy and just show up and work crazy hours all the time. And it made me really upset. Deep down internally, I knew that wasn't my purpose. And so I think one of the big things comparing startups to corporate environments is just the ability to run with ideas. You have a lot of autonomy in startups where you don't in corporate cultures. And that serves a purpose in the corporate, framework of how that business should run, that there isn't a lot of autonomy. But for me personally, as a problem solver, as someone who wants to bring new ideas to the world, that just wasn't a good fit. So I think that for me was probably the biggest issue.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think for me, it really comes down to being able to design systems versus follow them. Within large corporate cultures, they already have systems and processes, and this is the way that you do things. And you also have to deal with the politics of moving up a corporate ladder. And in many cases, it felt like the input that I had within an organization was largely lost, either just due to the sheer size of the organization or due to limitations of processes. I've always really enjoyed creating things from scratch. And I think business is just such an interesting environment to be able to express that creativity. And yeah, I think that's really what draws me to startups. It forces you to learn outside of a specific skill set. It forces you to think in different ways in order to be able to achieve something that feels impossible at times, versus just following some kind of protocol at a corporation. I think that's what I really, really appreciate about startups.
Yeah, I agree 110%. I think you said the word that I was looking for, creativity, right? I think when you kind of have that power to kind of at least not only inspire your co-founder or the people around you, or your co-founder inspires you, but you're showing people what you guys are made of, right? Like, why do you even deserve to be in this industry? Like, what are you guys doing different? And I think there's a lot of power to that, because people will respect that. Because people, and that's the analogy to corporate culture, right? You have to follow this. You actually don't. I think you can follow whatever you want to follow, as long as you're not cutting corners, but you're being innovative at the same time, and you're also elevating people, and those people will follow you, in a very positive manner. And I think there's a lot of issues with that in the corporate world, where people, I wouldn't say force them, but they're kind of putting pressure on them to do certain things in a certain way where they don't want to. And if they want to kind of elevate themselves, they kind of get pressure to not do that. And the human brain shouldn't work like that. You know, from I'll go into human psychology a little bit. I think the brain, we haven't discovered it, right? Totally. Same thing with the atom. And the way I think about it is like, if we haven't discovered the brain and your people are suppressing it, how could you even give people the potential, or to live up to their potential, right? Including me, us three right now, right? So we're kind of having this free flowing talk, and you guys are doing something very special in your realm. So I would say talk about Coast. What makes you guys different? Talk about your team, and like, how are you guys disrupting the field?
All right, I'll take this one. Yeah, it's a great question, right? So Coast is really this financial wealth management platform that's bridging this gap between traditional finance and decentralized finance. As many people are aware, and it's growing more and more popular every day, and more users onboarding into crypto. That right now these worlds are very siloed. Crypto operates in a very different sphere with different technological and just even technical conundrums or processes that people need to navigate on their own, versus traditional finance, which is its own field that is very established, has lots of traditional sort of rails and just processes to follow. There's nothing right now that's serving folks that own assets across both fields, and so that's where Coast really comes in. Think of it like a coastline. The coastline is the land that we know, and that's traditional finance. That's the beach. That's the land that already exists. The deep blue sea is really decentralized finance. It's this new generation of finance that's coming, and we want to be that coastline between those two worlds. And we want to basically allow folks to build financial plans and wealth management, long-term wealth management plans, while incorporating both of those asset types, and all asset types for that matter. And so I think our passion really comes from seeing that like 76% of Americans don't even have a financial plan. Most folks think they can't afford it. They don't need one. Consumer debt is at an all-time high. People are struggling every single day. And what are the tools to help them? We look at the market, there are things like budgeting apps. There are things like, how to spend your money or how to get rid of subscription fees. That's really not solving the core problem of educating people and giving them tools that help empower them to make sound financial decisions. And so that's all part of what we're building with Coast, is the intersection and then the empowerment that comes with that as well. Rustin, I'll let you jump in too.
Yeah, no, I think that was a beautiful description of what we're building. And if we think about going back to human psychology of what people need, we're seeing more and more people who are essentially trying to take their future into their own hands versus relying on other people. And we, I guess, kind of saw this emerge with the, with the GameStops and the AMC, all of the meme stocks that were blowing up in 2019, 2020, and that craze. And people started realizing, wait, I can place these trades, I can do these things on my own. And then you have people in the depths of Reddit who are doing better due diligence than many of the institutional traders. And I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that they can manage their money on their own. They can build wealth on their own. But this market is largely unserved. Institutions have lots of tools and APIs and information that much of retail doesn't have. And that puts retail at a disadvantage. And so if we can bring tools to retail and help the everyday person be able to plan long-term, grow wealth, and have peace of mind and security with their finances, I think that's worth building.
Yeah. Wow, that's very impressive. And I guess next time I gotta wear my Roaring Kitty t-shirt and like the headband and everything. I'm like, I know it's not Halloween yet, but it's around the corner. But doesn't mean you can't be him all year round, right? Even for Christmas, he could be Santa Claus for all I know.
For sure.
For a lot of people. But that's awesome. So that's really cool. But talk about your team as well. Like, who's like, how big is your team, and how are you guys expanding down the road, and like what is kind of the next steps in terms of like different markets and the regulations around those markets? Because I know that's a big issue, right? Crypto, and how could you guys explain to the audience about that? And because I'm sure they're interested. There's a lot of younger people. You guys are probably have a lot of younger people who are investing in you guys in terms of your platform, what they want to do, because they want to kind of get out of that traditional financial system, right? Same thing with like corporate. People want to get out of the corporate culture. Same analogy, right? That's what crypto is. Crypto is actually people. Educate me if I'm wrong. I think crypto is the way it works is that it's an immutable ledger, correct? So whatever is going on in these like processes, like you cannot change it. There's no way to really, I would say, modify the protocol, right? Unless the whole community does it as a whole. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
I would love to take the first half of that question. Rustin can take the second half. Yeah, Rustin and I, we met at a startup back in 2018. Right now, our team is just us. We have a fractional CMO, we have a contract marketer, and some design folks that we connect with, but it's really a super lean startup. We believe in just building with what we absolutely need right now, and then eventually add pieces as it makes sense. We both spent over 6 years building startups and being on teams. We're very familiar with this world of responsibility and taking ownership of our parts of the company. And right now, that means literally like we do everything, and there are specialties that we have. Like Rustin does more coding. I focus more on social and marketing and product and other things like that. But we like having the pressure on ourselves. We like having the ownership, and that we live and die by how well we can execute. For down the line, we'd love to, grow the team and add more people, but only when that makes sense. And I think that's a really critical part about building a startup is you need to like build until you feel the pain where you have to expand the team. That's just our own little philosophy on it.
Right.
As far as blockchain, it's maybe I'll take this question from the business side of it, because it's so new and nascent, and regulators are still trying to figure out how to approach it. And there's been a lot of pushback for the industry, and probably rightfully so. There's been a lot of scams, a lot of rug pulls, a lot of people have lost money, essentially gambling on tokens. And while I do think that a regulatory framework will help on the downside risk of many of these, it's still remained largely unclear as to how people can release, or how projects can release tokens. What are they even classified as? Because it doesn't really fall within the same framework as what we know of a traditional security or commodity. Many of these tokens have underlying technology that don't really fall into a security or a commodity. It's more like HTTPS to be able to broadcast across the internet. And so as we continue to build, it's kind of this ever-changing landscape with a new technology, complexities, and then trying to make that with a experience that is very approachable to normal people. And I think that we're on the cusp of some pretty substantial improvements. There's been a lot of improvement with the core technology over the past few years. And I think that we'll begin to see more and more consumer applications come online that's truly benefit people and disrupt many industries moving forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. So like, I know a few, like, I don't know if they're called competitors or not. Like Coinbase is a big one, obviously. Robinhood. I know Robinhood. Are they considered a combination of TradFi and DeFi, or is that incorrect?
Sort of. I mean, people can purchase crypto on Robinhood. They're more of a centralized exchange in the crypto sphere, much like Coinbase. And we
Yeah.
could get into the nuances of a centralized exchange versus a decentralized exchange if we wanted to down the line. But yeah, the fact that they are opening access to cryptocurrencies for retail consumers is a very, very interesting um, trend. We're seeing 93 million Americans now own digital assets. More than 600 million people globally do. And it can't be stopped. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube at this point.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah.
You gotta try that today. I don't
Yeah, try it. It's hard.
know. Yeah, for sure. That's no, that's interesting to say. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot about different industries, like legal industry. Maybe then you can talk about like wills, right? In terms of like Ethereum, and like if you want to transact something, you don't need a lawyer, correct? Like can you go through the Ethereum platform and just say like someone passes away, and that's the trigger for the next generation or that next person or the next entity to get those assets without the lawyer or whoever's in the place in the middle. Is that correct?
It depends. So this is kind of a gray area. You talk about passing on assets whenever someone dies. Uh, Fun fact, that was actually the original idea of Coast. We sought to try to figure out how do you pass on digital assets upon death. And come to find out, it's actually a pretty complex technological problem of being able to do that transference. And there's still laws and regulations around probate, at least in the US. There are estate planners, and you could create a trust. The complexities around that are still quite great and challenging. And so from a technological perspective, there needs to be advancement in the tech to enable a transfer while still remaining in line with local laws and jurisdictions. Because some states have a law that's whatever is stated in a will supersedes whatever is stated online. And in those cases, if you make a transfer, on the Ethereum blockchain or any blockchain for that matter, it could be going against local laws. And so how do you account for that? It's like this new technology can do something that wasn't really an issue or wasn't really a challenge within the traditional financial frameworks. Now, how do you account for that with this new technology? And so that's all stuff that we still need answers for.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm in the med tech field, and I guess I want your perspective on something. I think you guys can compare this, and that there are some people that I talk to saying, I run a few companies, and some of the stuff that we're doing is novel, and safety and efficacy is a big issue. I know that's a little bit different from the regulations in your sector, but the point is that regulations still need to be followed, right? And some people are like, well, if no one out there is doing this, why should we believe in you? And then people will be like, if someone is doing it, why should we believe in you? Well, either way, there's risks, right? So I don't think they understand that. Look, so this is the way I think about it, right? Coinbase kind of like started this up, right? It was very difficult for them to get to a certain point, and maybe educate me if I'm wrong, but they kind of created value for a lot of these smaller, crypto startups, saying that it's possible. Brian Armstrong, right? His name, the bald guy. Yeah. So he kind of set the stage. So he created value, and there's a lot of smaller companies that are kind of using that value to their advantage as leverage. And you go the opposite way too. Let's say you want to be the first Coinbase and no one's there. That's a humongous risk, but guess what? They're the league leaders for a reason, right? So the way I think about it is that you can be first, last, or in the middle, but it's how you execute. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to just note how companies evolve over time. So Coinbase began as a Bitcoin wallet. And in interviews of Brian Armstrong, he talks about kind of the inception of this wallet. He had a user who I guess created an account, created a wallet on Coinbase. And he conducted an interview with this user. And he basically asked him why he wasn't using it. And the person said, well, I don't have any Bitcoin. And it kind of dawned on Brian's mind that, hey, if I add this buy Bitcoin button within the wallet, would you use it? And the person was like, yeah, I think so. And so that's kind of how the entire exchange component of that business started. But it started out as just being a Bitcoin wallet. And then it's evolved from there, and it's paved the way for many companies to be able to essentially ride on its success and to be able to be where we are today as an industry. And so this happens throughout, all industries, medical, blockchain, whatever it is. The way that something starts is not necessarily where it ends, and it's always interesting to follow that evolution.
Yeah. Dan, do you have anything to add to that from your experience?
Yeah. I think it all really goes back to, like you said, execution, but really solving pain points. I think that's something we as founders always need to constantly reframe and refocus on, is like, what is the customer's pain point and how do I solve that? And is what I'm building actually solving a pain point, or is it just kind of nice to have? Like a Bitcoin wallet is cool to have, but if I don't own any Bitcoin, my problem is that I don't own any Bitcoin. Can you help me solve that problem? And sort of that's kind of our own inspiration with Coast too. Like as Rustin mentioned, we started as a beneficiary tool, and then we talked to a bunch of customers and they were like, yeah, that is a problem, but our other problem is that we have no other tools to integrate all of our finances and help us plan with digital assets. And we also want a beneficiary tool, but we have a lot of other problems too that you could probably solve for us first. And I think that's just so important to focus on, is not this lofty idea of I had a great idea and this is my great business, but being open to taking in feedback and adjusting it as needed to really solve those pain points and execute on that, delivering value to customers.
Yeah. So it seems that you guys were once those users and you guys felt that pain point too then. You guys wanted to buy digital assets and you're like, how can we do this? And it's a very simple solution, right? It's not like rocket science. You're not going to Mars, I don't think, right? But I would say that Occam's razor, right? The simplest solution is usually the best one, right? I think people make a lot of this very complicated. I mean, all these regulations, they should have some complexity, but I think they should start from a simple standpoint and then kind of build off that, right? If they have all these like regulatory frameworks that make it very difficult to innovate, how do you really get past that in terms of obstacles, right? You have no choice. So can you guys comment on that?
I think it's natural for someone who's creating something to think of all the cool features that they get added to a product. I've been guilty of this plenty of times with Coast. Like, oh man, we should add this. This would be sick. But It's like, does that really solve the problem in the most elegant fashion? I love thinking about Occam's razor. Elon Musk has a famous quote, said, no part is the best part. It's like, what can you remove? The beauty in a product is not necessarily everything that you add to it. It's what you can remove from it while still maintaining the best experience. I think it's why Apple is so fondly loved by all of their customers, because it's so simple. It's simple and easy to use. You don't have to worry about all of the complexities and nuances and 1,000 different settings that you can make. Now, granted, there are plenty of people who enjoy the complexities and they enjoy nerding out on their gadgets. But for most people, it's the simplicity that really draws them in. And so in an industry like blockchain, where it is full of complexity, where decentralized exchanges and bridging tokens across different exchanges and risk of hacks and how do you actually secure your crypto, all of those complexities will be abstracted away. And the simplest solutions will be the ones that win. And so as we kind of watch the evolution of this technology and this industry continue to evolve, and it's much the same in the medtech industry as well. There's a lot of complexities around that. But over time, we do think that they will become more simple, not more complex.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I would say that throughout my career, I focused on a lot of different types of modalities and therapeutics and devices and technologies on the medical side. And I would say like older doctors, right? They have trouble transitioning because they're so used to the antiquated systems. And they're like, oh, we're not going to change because we don't want to learn, or we don't want to do this. I'm not going to say it's all the doctors. I'm saying it's going to be a bunch of them because they're on the verge of retiring. They kind of don't want to deal with the complexities, even though it is pretty simple because they just don't want to. But my point is that like a lot of the younger doctors, they're willing to innovate much faster because they understand that technology runs pretty fast, and in terms of acceleration and how it's being applied and how patient care can be improved in a variety of ways if we use the technology. So that's the whole point of like use case studies or even we call it user needs. You probably call it something else, but you guys do the same thing. You guys ask questions to the people, and sometimes you guys are the users in a sense, right? There are technologies in my field where I could be the user. It could be a home kit for COVID, for example, simple. But how do I use it? Like, how simple is it, right? So we can go a lot of directions in this, and I think like the whole digital wallet analogy made sense, right? Because it's like it's a very simple tool. It's a wallet that just doesn't exist in your hand, but it's there, right? So the point is that like you said, simple solutions usually win, and there are people who make these things complicated. But I guess educating those people why it could be the next generation of value and how that can be passed down to the next generation as well. Not through a will, but you know what I'm saying. But the point is that do you guys have that same methodology, or like or is that just like is that something you guys have experienced?
Dan, you want to take that one?
So it's a bad question. I know.
No. I think it's really something to be said about innovation, right? And so it's like, how do we solve the problem in the most one-to-one straightforward way? And I think, for us personally, like we think about the future of blockchain and crypto as being ubiquitous with a savings account or a traditional financial account. And so what we're really trying to do is think of that future state of finance and build towards that, even though people today are like, not that many people own crypto, or it's only for people gambling on crypto. We're trying to show that these assets have staying power, and that the long-term game is that these will eventually dominate the industry. And to go back to your analogy, I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about at the start of the podcast with corporate environments, and it's the way of doing things. This is the process. This is what we've done forever, and being able to break out of that mind game that is, there is no room for innovation. Everything has been set. Steve Jobs always said, he's like, all the rules in the world are created by you, people that are no smarter than you. And once you really get out of that mindset, and you believe in yourself, that you can actually drive change, just like we're trying to do with Coast, just like you're doing in the med tech industry, that's where really cool things happen. The like most dangerous words are, this is the way we've always done it. And I think, in our industry, at least, traditional finance has resisted crypto and blockchain as much as possible because they have a market dominating position in making sure that the established ways of doing things remain. And so even just saying there's another type of asset someone could hold, they would say, well, that's illegal. I don't want that because that means money isn't coming to my firm and investing in my portfolio and stocks and assets under management. It really flips the paradigm when we believe that there's better ways of doing things, and that there are probably different ways of doing things. And what does that future state look like? I know that was a long-winded answer, but it's a deep topic, I think, philosophically, of recognizing where there's opportunity for change, and then also kind of convincing people to come along and invest into that change with you.
Just to quickly add on to that, I think it's an incentive structure problem. Many doctors are not incentivized to innovate because they already have established careers with, huge patient lists, and why do they need to change? And you mentioned the pace of innovation, and the rate of innovation is only accelerating. I think that medicine over the next 20 years is going to look dramatically different than it does today. But in order to get to that outcome that we all desire, the incentives really need to be aligned properly. And I think it's the same with the traditional financial institution. I think that TradFi will adopt digital assets as rails, blockchains as rails. Think about running the NASDAQ on a blockchain. All of these things can be performed much more eloquently and faster, and remove a lot of bloat from the system by adopting blockchain technology. But we have to get the incentives aligned before the traditional players are going to be willing to make that switch. The pain of change has to be less than the pain of staying the same. And I don't think that we're quite there yet.
Yeah. I don't know if that's called equilibrium or something. I'm trying to think of a word, but it's a difficult transition for sure. And you kind of hit a point where it's like innovation in the medical world too, right? If I'm developing this crazy new product, it's like maybe like a visual product, maybe like these glasses that can see, like Elon or something. We have to understand the reimbursement for that, right? And hospitals, right? And there's a lot of this bureaucratic areas that I don't want to get into. It's very complicated, but the point is that it's a very cool product. But will people be able to afford it, right? What is the value of being able to see again? Think about it. There's a lot of value there, right? What is the value of being able to get up and walk, right? That's simple, but that's actually very complex if you think about it, because we've never been there. God forbid, hopefully we never get there either. But the point is that, there are systems in place. I don't even call the systems. There's structures in place that shouldn't be existing in that regard to make those people get to that next level. A lot of those people could change the world. We don't know. Because we don't know, because their brain is stuck in that way, because they don't know what it feels like to see Dan or see Rustin, see Amit, or see crypto, even though crypto is digital. But the point is that, these analogies are very powerful, because I would say that we have the power to change that if we show what the innovation is, right? And we show what the value is. And it doesn't have to be in the US. It can be in other markets, right? It can be anywhere around the world. The people who would appreciate that, and then that could be a baseline saying, oh, we should mimic that. How many times has the US done that? Let's be real. But we won't get into that either. But yeah. So
I think
that's my perspective as well.
Yeah, and just kind of technology as a whole has this really interesting function of decreasing in price over time. Like if we think back on the early days of plasma TVs, they were egregiously expensive, and not very many people could afford them. Go back all the way to the personal computer. People were just like, why would you want a personal computer? And now we have one in our pockets that is incredibly affordable. And the same, I think, will happen within the medical industry. We're beginning to see many procedures come down in price as newer technology is adopted. Think about like eyesight corrective surgeries. Those used to be extremely expensive. Now you can go in and it's a 15-minute procedure and give it a couple days and your eyes are healed and you have 20/20 vision again at a very reasonable price. That happens across the board with every industry. All new innovation looks like a toy until it doesn't, until it's now a necessity, until it's now the new way of doing things. And yeah, I think that just on a human level, if we can personally, like each of us, learn to adopt these changes more rapidly, we would see a lot more growth within technology, within humanity, within just our lifestyles would dramatically improve if instead of resisting the change, we figure out how can we adopt the change, how can we use it in order to propel us to where we want to go.
Yeah. Dan, you have anything to add to that?
No, spot on. It's exciting too, I think. I'll just add this, that it's exciting to people who are builders and creative people to see new solutions. And I think that's sort of where I see the tide shifting, is that more and more folks want to see innovation and not just the same old ways of doing things. And I think that's really where you find your tribe of fellow builders and entrepreneurs, people willing to bet on themselves to go build these things that should exist. Because for so long, it was really, the power was held by someone who says, I can make this change, but I don't want to. And now anyone can make the change. And so do you want to be on the cutting edge and the energy of moving forward and evolving? I think for most people, that answer is yes. And it will only become more and more folks moving forward.
Yeah, that's a big goal of mine too. Like I write about this on LinkedIn. A lot of people reach out to me, kind of saying, we're very inspired by your story. I'm like, I make it personal because I want them to know my story. I was actually afraid to tell my story at one point because I thought I was going to be judged, but I was like, I think the only person that is going to be judged is me judging myself, right? And if I don't do that, then who cares? I'm saying the truth, and the truth is what matters. That's the foundation, right? It's immutable, the truth, right? So the point is that once you kind of like understand that, I'm sure you guys do too, and in terms of blockchain, because that's what it is, people will get inspired. People will say, wow, we can do this. We can do something special without following the antiquated society or, what people think from a different culture, the baby boomers or whoever it is. I'm not saying all of them, I don't want to judge them, but the thing is that a lot of them do think in that structured manner because you have to buy a house at this stage, you have to have kids at this stage, or you have to do this. But, you can still do that at your own pace. just like innovation at your own pace. Sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it goes slow, but guess what? Don't compare yourself to someone else's finish line, right? Start where you got to start, and then finish where you got to finish. Doesn't mean you'll come in last. Just execute flawlessly. So, I guess talk about a take-home message, right? Talk about how would you guys inspire someone, right? Someone who's kind of wants to get into the blockchain space or wants to even invest, and they're kind of afraid. And I even tell my mom about this, like the S&P 500 every year. It's going to 10%, right? And it's a great investment over 30-year period. And like, what analogies can you give to that? Is a Bitcoin like that, or like how would you inspire people to invest in crypto or even invest in your platform?
Ooh, that is a very long discussion that we could embark upon.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to take it a little bit less focused on why people should own digital assets and more on why people should build ideas that they have. Even if you build something and it doesn't work, you learn from that, you grow from that, and that could be a building block for someone to be able to take what you've learned from and be able to execute on it in the future. There are plenty of times where great ideas came too early, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't try. The cost of being able to build a business, the cost of being able to build applications is dramatically plummeting, where people who have no coding experience are now building multi-million-dollar applications. I mean, that is just crazy. And so we have to get kind of out of what we previously once thought, oh, I don't have this set of skills. I'm not a computer science, major. I don't know how to code. It's like, well, you don't really need to anymore. There are huge set of tools out there to be able to take that creativity and build something. Now, as far as Coast is concerned, I think the takeaway message is that people should care about their finances and to not be blindly just following someone on the internet of what they say to purchase or what they claim to be the best investment strategy or whatever. Personal finance is personal. And so I think it's really important to figure out what are your goals, what are the things that you want to accomplish with money. And if digital assets are in line with that, then yeah, look at those. Do your own research. Don't follow blindly what people are saying online. I guess like if you are unwilling to do the research, then the S&P is probably a great tool for you. With maybe a small percentage of Bitcoin. Yeah, I think like BlackRock and Larry Fink and some of those other TradFi guys are now recommending a 3 to 5% allocation to Bitcoin. And that's not investment advice. Again, it's very personal based on your risk and your goals.
Right.
But I think the biggest thing is just to care enough to look at it, care enough to be honest with yourself about what kind of person are you? Are you the type of person that's you want to learn about this stuff? Or are you the type of person who wants to be pretty hands-off? And that will kind of guide your direction from there. Sorry, that was a long-winded two-part takeaway.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I love the answer. Dan, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah. I loved your line, and I'll borrow this from a rapper I'm a fan of, but it's you versus you. You're running your own race. It's really as simple as that. Like, you start where you start, and that can apply to investing, that can apply to just learning or trying things. I think for so long, or a big challenge that we have where information is so accessible is where to start. And I think the key is actually just to start. It's not to overthink, this is my plan, I'm going to do this routine. It just spend 5 minutes a day, then make it 10 minutes, then 15 minutes, so on and so forth, whether that's building a business, learning about finance, looking at your own finances, thinking about where you want to be, where you are, and how to get there. I think that's really my take-home message is just, as Rustin said, like, care. If you care, like, we only get one life. If you care, you can do tremendous things. If you don't care, that's your choice. But if you care and you really show up, it's going to be painful, it's going to be hard, but it will absolutely be worth it. Even if you fail, you will have shown yourself that you're capable of doing something that's really hard. And I think doing hard things is the greatest way to really unlock our true self and our true potential. So I will just leave it at that. Rustin's advice is great advice too, but just care and go for it. The worst you'll do is have a great story and a great experience to share with others.
Yeah, you heard it from the Coast team. The people who want to start a company, just start somewhere. Don't think about it. Put it on paper. That's the start, right? Put something on paper. Put anything. Do a doodle of something. It's the way Jack
Exactly.
Dorsey created Twitter, right? Or X, whatever you want to call it. He sketched it out. So that's all you have to do. I think a lot of people can learn from these stories, learn from you guys, learn from those inspirations. Those guys they had the same mind as us. We're no different than Jack Dorsey, are we? No, I think we're all humans and we all have the same potential if you just believe to start somewhere, but put in the effort. People say, oh, I don't have the time. I think we all have the same time, right? In terms of 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Some people like to work more, work less, but that's your balance. Call it a harmony, call it a balance, whatever you want, your priorities. But if you're so adamant about something and you love it so much, then just start it and see what happens. See the people around you, start networking, start talking to people, right? Start talking to Dan and Rustin about crypto. Why not? They will, you would probably gladly reach out to these folks saying, hey, like we can educate you. We can, let's show us your platform, and like do like a demo and seeing like how we can really simplify not only this complex thing, what they call blockchain, which I don't think it's super complex, but you can show them the simplicity of your platform, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. If anyone wants to reach out to us, we're always available. Hit us up on LinkedIn, send us an email, hit us up on X, send a smoke signal, like whatever you got to do. We'd be happy to have conversations with folks.
Okay. Slide into Rustin's DMs. It's okay, guys.
That's right.
And Dan's. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. And I just want to appreciate both of your time. Today I learned a lot, honestly. This is something new to me in a lot of ways. I know the fundamentals, but I know it keeps changing in a good way. So thank you for educating me, and hope the audience also gets something out of this. And hope you guys to have you back on soon as you guys kind of develop your company and create more waves, right? Host?
That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah. Have a great day, guys, and cheers.